This is FE Peer Review, the Flat Earth Peer Review channel. The date is September 19th, 2020. The pair of videos in review are by Ranty and Dr. John D. Links to the videos and to all other references in this review can be found in the description below. This video is in response to two videos, one posted by Dr. John D. and another posted by Ranty, which draws from the Dr. John D. video. Dr. John D. walls himself off from any direct engagement by keeping comments turned off for his videos. So I address this video directly to him without being able to inform him myself. If anyone watching this is in contact with him, I would appreciate it if they would bring this to his attention. An essential part of the scientific process is the independent analysis and confirmation of observations and experimentation results. By walling himself off from the community engaged in this research and dialogue, Dr. John D. is engaging in dubious scientific practices. Ranty, on the other hand, is very much engaged in dialogue and shares his information freely. For this, I want to thank him and let him know that I appreciate his openness. Thank you, Ranty. That said, I need to chide Ranty mildly for probably unintentionally misusing Dr. John's video. Ranty seems to think Dr. John's observation of the Rampion wind farm shows France in the background. The observation point, the wind farm, and there's France. Dr. John D. makes no such claims in his video. Ranty sees what I can only describe as brown muck on the horizon and seems to think that this is the French coast. Whatever one may think of the French, France itself is not brown muck. Dr. John D.'s video was shot in the beginning of August 2020. It has been a relatively dry summer, and I think we're seeing nothing other than a rather dusty summer atmosphere. So until Ranty can demonstrate that what we're seeing in the video is actually France and not brown muck, I'm not going to address his points on seeing 150 kilometers to it. That there is a picture, by the way, of Le Havre, the town on the French coast that is opposite of the observation point of Worthing. I encourage people to check out Dr. John's video, which Ranty used, to see for themselves the brown muck, which looks nothing like France. That there is another photo of the Rampion wind farm, taken from near the farm on the water, looking back towards the English coast. Note the distinctive yellow bases on these wind turbines. We're going to take a look at that later. Moving on, we will now look at Dr. John's video. His video looks at the Rampion wind farm, roughly 15 kilometers off the coast at Worthing Beach from where he is doing his observation. He starts with the definition of, quote, geometric horizon, which is intended to obfuscate the difference between the physical geometric horizon and the observed or apparent horizon. He writes, due to the geometric shape of a sphere, there is a specific maximum physical distance an observer can see that is determined by the height of the observer and the size of the sphere. This maximum distance is called the physical geometric horizon. That is not correct. I will come back to that. If we live on a geometric globe, then the physical geometric horizon, the line where the sea is observed to meet the sky, must be at a specific distance for an observer at a certain height. No imaginary other horizon or second horizon where the sea meets the sky again can be visible past the physical geometric horizon, because the physical geometric horizon is where the sea is observed to meet the sky. This is an exquisite example of circular reasoning and reveals what I believe is Dr. John's essential intellectual dishonesty. He is using linguistic tricks to attempt to deceive, and he knows he is using tricks. He is doing it intentionally. I believe this reveals that he knows his assertions are actually false. This will be evident further along as well. He is conflating the geometric with the observed horizon. They are, in fact, two separate things. This diagram comes from a very informative set of web pages put together by some folks at the San Diego State University. It describes simply how the observed horizon is typically beyond the geometric horizon. You see, these are two different things. The observed horizon is beyond the geometric horizon. This is basic science and was explored as far back as the early 1700s by Père-Antoine François Laval, as reported by Cassini. We look at the top image. We can picture this as a planet with no atmosphere. and there's an observer some height h above the surface of the planet looking out and seeing a horizon at point G. That horizon is the point where a ray of light departing in a tangent line from the surface of the planet strikes the observer. Light is being reflected off that point G in all bunch of directions, basically 180 degrees. Light is being cast off of that point G, and the tangent, the ray that happens to be right at the ground, tangent, is being seen by the observer. That's what makes that point visible to the observer and makes it the horizon. Take a point halfway between G and S, and you've got light coming off in all directions, and sure, lots of light's coming up to the observer. Take a point beyond G, near the tip, and the light coming tangent off of that point is moving up above the observer, so the observer does not see the point beyond G. That is all based on the assumption that light is traveling in a straight line from its origin point to the observer. Introduce an atmosphere of gases which cause light to bend, to not travel in a straight path, and the situation changes. We still have a physical geometric horizon, a point on the surface of the globe that is tangent to a straight line from the observer to the sphere. That point exists, it's measurable, but it's not what the observer sees as a horizon. It's not the observed or apparent horizon. Rather, that ray of light that comes from H, well beyond G, which originally was traveling in a straight path and was up above the head of the observer, beyond what the observer could see, due to its passage through the atmosphere of gases which cause it to change its path, it strikes the eye of the observer, and the observer is able to see the point H. That is the observed horizon as opposed to the geometric horizon. And under normal atmospheric conditions, that point H is always beyond G. There are some, but very few rare occasions when that point H is closer than G. Back to Dr. John's slides. What we see here is a diagram showing an observer, a geometric horizon, and a blocked view. Well, he is, again, obfuscating. He's conflating the observed horizon with the geometric horizon, which it simply is not, as we saw. So this, if it's the geometric horizon, if we decide that this point is the geometric horizon, as he says with his little arrow here, then it's entirely possible, given certain atmospheric conditions, that the base of the windmill over at the wind turbine over at the far right, the base of it, could be seen if the atmospheric refraction effects were strong enough to bend that ray of light coming off the base over and to the eyes of the observer. This effect can be observed both in atmospheric gases and in liquids. This brief video clip gives a demonstration of a tank with fresh water over salt water bending a laser light. There are many such demonstrations. My point here is not to, quote, prove atmospheric refraction. It is already standard and thoroughly accepted science. I am providing links in the description to many other sources that confirm this, including studies done by and for the US military and for the telecommunications industry, in which atmospheric refraction is described and included as part of their work. If people want to make long-distance observations and draw conclusions from those observations on the basis of there being no atmospheric refraction, they must first prove that the established science on the subject is wrong, and their evidence must meet the standard of proof of the mainstream scientific community. In other words, it must be based on actual physical observations that have been repeated by others with similar results, and this work must have been published in peer-reviewed scientific journals where it can come under the scrutiny of leading authorities in relevant disciplines. Moving back to Dr. John Dee's observations, he begins with a few slides that lay out some basic ideas that he wants to convey. He shows some imagery that he collected with his camera, and then he has a few points he's making in this slide, which I'll repeat. A, no refraction in the form of an inferior mirage. That's correct. There was none visible in the video. B, no refraction in the form of a superior mirage. The same. C. The images of the wind turbines are well defined with limited heat distortion at the distance filmed. That is questionable. We will take a look at that in a moment. And D, the sea is very calm. That is true. So aside from C, everything on here is true. But this is called the truth, but not the whole truth. What is important here is what is missing. What was observed? He says nothing about atmospheric refraction, nothing about looming, and nothing about compression associated with looming and atmospheric refraction. These are very evident in the observation, and he says nothing about it. Before we move on to this, hang on a moment. We're going to look at a brief clip here from Dr. John Dee's video. He's panning around at the various wind turbines and then settles in on the power substation that is servicing or that is serviced by these turbines. And you will see lots of heat, lots of variation in atmospheric conditions due to heat waves. We'll watch it once at the regular speed and then I may repeat it slightly slower. Note the shimmering and that way the outlines are all moving constantly. So there are plenty of there's plenty of atmospheric movement happening here. I think that should be clear enough. We will pause that and return to our images. So we saw that there is a lot of movement in the atmosphere, and he's said nothing about looming and compression. I want to show a few images, screenshots taken from his video that show compression in action. This here, well, we can see it here at 1147, is the base of one of these wind turbines. And what I've done is I put it into Photoshop, and I used Photoshop to draw a little red line across the base. And I used that as a kind of a ruler. I rotated it 90 degrees and found that the proportion of this yellow is approximately 1.5 to 1. And then I repeated this with the base from that original image, which of the turbines that was taken up close. We'll go back to that image there. I took this far left turbine and I put it in the same Photoshop file and increased the size of it a little bit so that it'd be easy to see them side by side. And then I did the same thing. I used the base as a measuring reference. I created a red line and then I copied that, rotated it 90 degrees to measure the height, and I found that the proportion of this rectangle here in the wind turbine photo taken up close is approximately 3 to 1. The height is approximately 3 times the base in this yellow section. Whereas in the image from the video of Dr. John, we see that it is roughly 1.5 to 1. So we have compression of perhaps as much as 50% in this image of Dr. John Dee's videos. This is classic atmospheric refraction in action. And to simply let this go by on his screen and say nothing and pretend that he can ignore atmospheric refraction is just ludicrous. I don't know who he thinks he can fool by just letting this stuff slide past. Apparently he can fool some people. Now let's look at another slide. This is a slide from his video of 2747 timestamp. And this comparison image is from his own video. I didn't put this together myself. I just copied this directly from his screen. What we see is the service boat that comes around to the wind turbines. From the video, we see the image above. And then he found a close-up photo of this same boat. And we will compare the two. I will start by pointing out the deck rail. We'll start at the higher point of the red deck rail. It makes a little swoop down as we move to the left, and then it's got a little notch, and then a drop, and then we're at the lowest section. If we compare that to the lower image, we see that the proportion of that first swoop, the vertical distance, the vertical dimension from the top to the bottom of that swoop is almost half of the entire red zone on the boat. Compare that to the upper image where it's barely a quarter. And then let's continue on. We've got a second smaller kind of swoop and then a drop to the lower deck. And if we compare the proportions of that to the upper image, we see that the proportions are completely off. The swoop is squashed and the vertical drop is raised up. So there's a whole lot of compression, weird compression effects happening that are changing the proportions of the bottom of the boat. Look again. What do you call the front of the boat? The hull, the stern? I don't know that stuff. I'm not a sailor. Anyway, look again at the front of the boat. We see that in the lower image, it's a nice straight, it's a nice angle, nice consistent angle with a small curve at the bottom where it meets the water. Look at the upper image, and it's got a great big chunk taken out of it, like a giant shark leaped out of the sea and took a bite out of the front of that thing. So don't tell me there's no distortion happening in these images. One last thing before I wrap this up. Dr. John D. has given us an observation from Worthing at a distance of roughly 11 miles from the wind turbines. He says 2 feet off the water line. Looked to me more like 3, but what doesn't really matter, 2 feet or 3. He then goes on to say that it's impossible, to see the base of these wind turbines, but we see the base of these wind turbines, so the Earth must be flat. That's where it's all going. And well, we've seen from his own imagery that there's extreme refraction happening. So let's put his numbers into our favorite little curve calculator, Walter Bislin's advanced curve calculator. We've got an observer height of 3 feet. We've got a target distance of 11 miles. Target size 459 feet. That's the height of the turbines to their tip. And I've got it set right now at 0 refraction. At 0 refraction, we've got 52 feet hidden. That, of course, until he proves to the satisfaction of the U.S. military and the telecommunications industry that there's no such thing as atmospheric refraction, is nonsense. So we will put standard refraction. Okay, with standard refraction, we've still got some hidden, 41 feet, significant amount. But what I'm going to do is just simply increase refraction and keep your eye on the hidden pink highlight up above. As the hidden drops, it will go to 0. And there, 0. We are in the extreme refraction zone. Yes, this is extreme refraction, but it is within, it slipped, it's within the realm of possibility in nature, especially when your camera is 2 feet or 3 feet off the water, which is the very spot that gives the absolute most refraction effect. So he's put his camera in the place where he's going to get the absolute most extreme refraction, and then proceeds to pretend as if refraction doesn't exist. This is the intellectual dishonesty I was speaking of at the start of the video. What Dr. John needs to do is be honest about his observations. What I suggest is a very simple way to demonstrate his integrity as somebody who is really interested in getting at the truth, is to do more than one observation and get his camera and his feet out of the water where you're going to get loads of refraction. So here we are on Worthing Beach. He was set up right about here, or maybe right about here. I saw these buildings in the background as he was setting up. And he was down right at the water at low tide. Well, he can move up to the street and be at around 3 meters above the water line. He could do an observation if he really wants to stick his feet down in the water and put his camera down in the water. He can do his observation at 0, but then go just take a few minutes, go up the street, go up there and do another at 3 above, and record the results. And what would be really great? Get into one of these buildings. I don't know if any of these are public, like a hotel or something. I'm not too familiar with this part of the UK. I've been to Brighton, but not this particular town. Get into one of these buildings where you can get permission to go up on the 3rd or 4th floor, or maybe even up on the roof of one of the taller ones, and do yet another observation. Wouldn't that be fantastic to have more data? And do these observations, within an hour of each other. Atmospheric conditions aren't going to change much in an hour, so refraction effects and all are going to be rather similar over the course of an hour. And get data from the water level, from 3 meters, from the top of one of these taller buildings, that would be really informative. It could really further the discussion and advance our knowledge. So why don't you give it a go, Dr. John, and stop playing games? Thank you. You have a nice day. And Ranty, thanks for sharing this stuff with us. I want you to know that I appreciate your efforts. And if you felt like doing that, if Dr. John is unwilling to, you're always welcome to as well. I hope to make a trip to the UK in the coming year if the travel situation changes. And if I'm able to do that trip, I will probably take the opportunity to repeat this observation. In the meantime, you guys who are already there, I'd love to see more of this kind of stuff. So thanks to all of you. You all have a wonderful day. And for those of you watching, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, I love to have new subscribers. And I love it when people leave comments. Just keep them polite if you can. No need to snipe and make rude remarks. It doesn't help. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.